Welcome to another episode of Listen, Learn, and Love, hosted by Richard Osler. My guest on today's podcast is Daniel. And how do I say your last name, Daniel?
So similar to pizza, just different vowels. It's D'Apuzzo.
So Daniel D'Apuzzo is here on our podcast. Daniel, will you tell us a little bit about you, where you grew up, and just kind of give us a brief bio of you for our listeners?
Yes. So born and raised in Italy in the south. If some people are familiar with the region, it's Puglia. That's where panzerotti were made, actually. That's kind of like where the tradition started. So Naples is known for their pizza, and then Puglia is known for their panzerotti. I guess I was born in Taranto in Puglia, and then I was raised in Naples. So I guess I've been raised around carbs. That's my background.
And tell us, our listeners, how old you are and give them a background on your education.
Yeah, so I'm 28 years old now. I did my undergrad in Rome. The background was mathematics. I knew that I wanted to get into something more applied eventually. So I came to BYU. I did my master's in applied math. And then after that, I kind of started working in finance.
So you've got a master's in applied math from BYU.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
And you're working in finance right now.
Right.
And tell our listeners where you served your mission.
That was in Calgary, Canada.
In America, we do this thing where we put dots on the maps, Daniel, and guess. And we've had 3 sons go on mission. Did you do that in Italy? Were your family and friends guessing? And did anybody guess Canada?
No. So when I did my opening the mission call party, most people were guessing Spain. They were guessing, maybe a few were guessing Africa or Italy, but no one guessed Canada. So yeah.
That's great. I became aware of Daniel about a month ago. I was visiting with some people, and Daniel came along. And in the course of that visit, I learned more about Daniel, and he has written a book about that sort of starts with the breakup of a girlfriend relationship. Mm-hmm. That happened about 3 years ago. At the same time, being aware a good friend was suicidal. And Daniel, even though he's busy with his academic career and also has now a career in the financial sector, found time to write this book called Rising with Broken Wings: How to Secure Your Peace While Facing Life's Difficult Uncertainties, which is available on Amazon. And I read this book in about 2 days and was just so touched with it. I was so impressed with your ability to talk about this relationship that ended and how painful that was. Mm-hmm. But then to take all that experience and life lessons and to give hope to other people that are walking difficult roads. And in this podcast, we often talk about people that are walking difficult roads. And I thought, and I put your book on my Facebook feed, inviting people that are wanting to help people that are on difficult roads or on difficult roads themselves to read your book, because it has some incredible thoughts and perspective and insights to help people. But give our listeners a little back, before we talk about the book, just take us back to why you decided to write this book in the first place, because you're a busy guy. You're not exactly like an English major, or you're in a whole different academic field than writing.
It would have been useful to be an English major, that's for sure. At least the people that helped me with the editing, they would have probably appreciated if I was.
And English isn't your first language.
No. Yeah.
So
I think the idea that I wanted to eventually be a writer started when I was 16, because I started reading certain books. I think the first one that really impacted me was Jonathan Livingston Seagull. And I just realized how much you can be influenced by someone else's writing, even someone that is dead, someone that is not there anymore, someone that maybe has lived in a different country you've never seen, how through their words in a book they can still be very real in your life. So I knew that I eventually wanted to have the same influence in other people's lives, even if I couldn't be there physically present. So my hope is that Christ can work through me to help someone that I've never met. I guess that's my hope. And I don't hope to receive any monetary compensation for what I do. But I do hope that at the end of the day, if someone, even if a stranger reaches out to me and says, hey, Daniel, something that you wrote, something you said helped me in my day, that I think that's what I want my life purpose to be.
How long ago did you decide to write this book? And how long then did it take to write, Daniel?
Oh, that's a good question. I think probably like 5 years ago, I started playing with the idea. I felt that I lacked life experience to write a book, so it was more of a down the road project and something that I was flirting with the idea, but I wasn't married to the idea, shall we say. After the story with a girl named Grace in the book, and after the healing experience that I went through, when I started helping friends going through similar things, the feedback that I got from them then made me realize that now I was ready, because they were telling me that they had never heard of similar concepts or similar ideas on how to overcome a breakup. And so that's when I felt, okay, maybe now I guess I have a voice.
And what kind of response have you gotten? I assume you've gotten messages through social media, through other ways, just telling you how helpful this is from complete strangers.
Yeah. So when it comes, so I would divide the response between friends and strangers. When it comes to friends, probably the most surprising thing is that a lot of my friends are actually dealing with the same suicidal thoughts, and I just had no idea. And they start reaching out to me, telling me that that's what they're going through only after the book came out, because now they believe that I can empathize, and now I can understand what they're going through. They didn't believe it was something they could share with me at the time. So the first response that I've been very grateful for is that people that I already knew, I guess I've reached out now, letting me know that that's what they're going through. So that has been the first response. The other response from strangers, I'm always humbled when someone on Instagram, because that's where I guess I do most of my social media influence. Some people have reached out of the blue, people that I never met before, and they said that they read the book. And just the other day, there was this young lady that reached out and said, Daniel, I also I lost a father to suicide, but because of that, I gained a heavenly Father, and I'm grateful for what I went through.
Wow.
And so they told me how they were relating to the book, how much it has helped them to gain a little bit more perspective. Also, something that I was not aware of is that there's been a few divorcees, people that just went through a divorce, that have reached out to me after the book, and they said that this was what they needed. I guess it was one way that God has answered their prayers, which to me, it's all God's grace, because this is not something that I would definitely deserve or definitely merit on my own, because I don't feel that I have the skills to help people at that level. I don't feel that people 20 or 30 years older than me, should turn to me for answers, for any type of help. I would never see myself becoming that impactful, I would say. So to me, it's just a testimony that when you want to do the right things, God, I guess, finds his way to use you.
Tell our listeners how to find you on Instagram.
So Instagram is first and last name. So it's Daniel and then D'Apuzzo, D'Apuzzo. You can also find me with a simpler name. It's Surgo, which is Surgo, which in Latin means I rise. Just because one of my favorite poems is Still Arise. And anyway, it's a sentence I like to go by it in Latin. I just like that.
I like that. And even though I've said the title of the book, will you tell our listeners the title of the book and again where they can find the book?
Yes. So it's Rising with Broken Wings, which was actually suggested by my suicidal friend. I had another title in mind, but then when he proposed that idea, I felt it was the right one. And I got on Amazon, on Kindle. That's the best way right now to get the book.
And I think one of the things I love about your story is, as I read it, it healed me a little bit. I realized that I've had some pain in my life, different type of pain. I haven't had a breakup of a relationship, but I've had other types of pain in my life, and your book resonated with me, and it helped to heal me. And one of the things I believe so strongly is that we can be helped by people from all different ages. Here you are. You're young enough to be my son, Daniel. You're 28 years old. And after serving in my YSA assignment, I recognize that there are people that have less experience, quote unquote, in life, but have insights that I don't have and perspectives that I don't have. And we all need to listen to each other to see how we can all help each other. And I love that you've courageously stepped in the space and written a book. Because I would guess there's a lot of people say, Daniel, you can't do that. And maybe you heard those thoughts coming into your brain at night. But one of the things I love about your story is you just said, I I'm not going to listen to any of those voices. I'm going to go write this book,
Mhm.
and I'm going to go publish it on Amazon, and I'm just going to follow my impressions of what I need to do to help other people.
Yeah, as you were saying that, there's one of my favorite quotes that came to mind is by George MacDonald, which is someone that we don't like talk as much about. But basically, he said in his book, it's called Unspoken Sermons, and he said, there is a part of your heart that only God can touch. And the converse is true. There is a part of God's heart that only you can discover. And so our purpose here on earth is to discover that part about God that only we were called to find so that we can share it with our brothers and sisters. And so to me, the more different you are, the more unique your experiences are, I hope that you will feel you're the only one, you're left out, because it means there's only that you're about to find a part of God's heart and that you're meant to share with other people. So in a way, I hope you are unique and you find yourself being, singled out, because it means you're closer to find something so unique that only God can teach you and that only you can teach to other people. And so when it came to this book, yeah, I've had people that told me, like, what do you know? You were spoiled. You grew up in a very sheltered family. How dare you write a book about healing when people go through the worst, many worse things that you have been through? And I'm sure that's true in one way, but my challenges are unique as much as I am unique. This was my cross to bear. And I'm telling you how I bear my cross. And then if that inspires someone to bear their cross, then great. But this is the corner of God's heart that I was able to find and that I am going to bring with you. In a way, through life, everyone builds their own necklaces of truth in a way. And you go through life finding your gems and building your own necklace. And I'll never judge someone's necklace or their collection of truths that they find throughout life to be different than mine, because it's theirs. And it's their gems, their treasure, just as I found my treasure through my healing. And so I love to share with people that want to listen. And if some people, they don't want to listen, and I pray for them and I, let them go as they please, but I don't. I guess I just hope if I'm able to help someone to find God's grace through their challenges, then maybe all of the pain and suffering wasn't wasted.
I love that, Daniel. Talk about the breakup you went through and how that, just how difficult that was, and how you, and how it took so long to heal from that, and how painful that was.
Yeah. So to give you some background, so I guess I was raised in a very perfect family. So like my parents, they were always in love, and never heard them fight, which I never heard them argue. I also never seen them kiss each other, being too affectionate. So I don't know how to take that, but I guess even to this day, my dad sends emails to us and to me and my siblings, and he tells us how much he loves our mom and how much they're still Twitter pated at 60. So I grew up in that family where family and relationships and marriage was something beautiful that gave life meaning. And so I grew up with my dad always telling me that, like, Daniel, as long as you put your spouse's happiness first, you'll have the best relationship. Just never, put it on yourself. Just think about the other person first. And so with that background, marriage became the one thing that I really wanted in life. I was pretty ambitious in school. I was pretty ambitious when it came to my career, but when it came to marriage, it was my non-negotiable. I wanted. If I could, I would have been born married if I could, right? That's how much I really craved it. And so when then I became of age, like 24, 25, then I felt secure and excited to jump into that reality. And that's when I met Grace. And we were set up on a blind date by a common friend. And I felt the first moment I saw her that she would be the one. She felt somewhat the same, because we progressed very quickly to the point that we were engaged maybe 6 months later. And this all happened in the States. I have traveled back and forth between Italy and the States since, during our relationship. So sometimes we would talk on the couch if it was at her place. Sometimes we would talk on Skype or whatever it was. We developed a very spiritual and romantic relationship where God and our partner all of a sudden started to become the same, meaning that I started to learn more about God by learning about grace. And I started learning more about grace by learning about God. So to me, that's when heaven and earth, in a way, collapsed into one.
I love that.
To me, I didn't have to hope to be saved in heaven one day because I had grace, already now. So to me, heaven was a promise for the future, but was already a reality. And so when I would read scriptures, I would think about her. But then when I was with her, then I would think about scriptures. And so it just became one. And it was, anyway, that was my heaven on earth, right? This was for like 6 months into a relationship. We had been engaged for a couple of months, for a couple of weeks. And all of a sudden, she just started to become very quiet, a little feisty. Meaning she started to complain about things about me that she never complained before. But again, with the attitude of my dad, okay, what can I do for you? I don't care about the hurt you're causing me right now. I didn't talk about it, but it was, okay, what can I do for you? Like, is there any unmet needs that I can help you provide for? And when I would ask that question, she didn't know, so she just blocked me out in a way. And then she decided to go on this family trip where I was supposed to go with them, but she said, Daniel, I need to go by myself with my family. Please don't come. I just need time on my own. And I never seen her since.
Wow.
Meaning, I guess she said goodbye, going to that family vacation, saying, okay, when I get back, we'll talk about this, and we'll solve whatever it is that we're going through. We were supposed to get married in a couple of months, and actually, I never seen her again.
Wow.
So she left. She didn't tell me much. I just know that one day I went into my garage and I found her ring on the floor and a book that I lent her, and that was it. Like, all of her stuff was gone because she had started moving some of her furniture in my place. But then all of it was gone, and I never talked to her again.
And so she, as part of moving out, left the ring and the book.
Uh-huh.
And that was totality at
Yeah.
the end of the relationship.
Yeah.
With no communication.
Yeah. So that's
brutal.
What made it worse is that I guess I was a new person in the States. I just moved for my master's degree. I didn't have any close friends, close enough that I could go through that with. I didn't have family. I was like I found myself in this empty house with an emptier heart and trying to
empty your heart.
Trying to figure out how to move on from something like that. But the fact is that I was disappointed at grace, certainly to a degree, but I was disappointed at God that he would play with my feelings or my desires like that.
Why were you disappointed with God?
Because that's the one thing that I had sacrificed and obeyed so much for to have, like marriage and companionship. And when that was taken away by someone that I felt God had prepared for me, then I just felt played by both. So that's when I would say that's when I started praying and studying the scriptures, because everything was starting to want, and if grace left, then God left with her.
Some of the single people I meet with feel like they get an answer to marry somebody and then it doesn't work out, and it's very difficult for them to reconcile the feeling that God told them to be in this relationship, and they were obedient to God and the feelings they were getting, and then the relationship ended, and at times it's complicated their feelings about God and their relationship with God, and they've had to navigate that.
Right. Yeah, and I knew that I had to find the why, or the why behind, because otherwise living without the why and explain it to me would be like living without a limb for the rest of my life.
And was that a why from God or a why from grace, or both?
I never got the why from grace. Still to this day, I never heard from her. So I knew that a why from God would have been, satisfactory, at least. If I can tell the story to myself of why it happened in a way that I don't cry anymore when I tell the story, and I can revisit the memories, then I know that I've healed. And so that's kind of what started the healing process after that. For the first couple months, I didn't talk to anyone. What made it specifically hard is that in those couple of weeks that she was struggling with her feelings or whatever she was going through, she said some things along the lines of, you're not masculine enough for me. Like, I don't feel that you are tough enough. You're not alpha enough, whatever that was. And so what made it hard is that now when I was trying to make friends with guys, then I would see them, and I would see them with bigger arms than mine. Or I would see them with, they go to the gym, and maybe they have the masculinity that Grace wanted, right? And I couldn't keep away from my head the thoughts of her being intimate with them.
That's honest.
And that just destroyed my self-esteem. It was as if, Grace was telling me, Daniel, see, this is what I want, and you couldn't give it to me.
Wow.
So I couldn't make friends.
And you're
I
really honest in your book about that. You talked
yeah,
about, should I have been going to the gym more?
right.
Should I have been stronger? And I
Yeah.
think that was so honest and vulnerable, but it made you so real. And I thought it took
Yeah.
tremendous courage to put that all out in writing, because I think it helps other people, Daniel, when you're vulnerable and honest like that.
And I remember this one day that I was working out at home. This was still when I had no idea where Grace was, right? And I remember I was working out at home, like hoping to get a little bit bigger. And I remember the door knocked, and I was like, oh, maybe this is Grace, right? And she came back exactly when I was working out. Maybe now she will want me, right?
Perfect.
Right. And instead it was the neighbor, right? The least person I wanted to talk to. But yeah, I really, in a way, I was still hoping to get her back, even if that meant changing myself into someone that I wasn't. Because in my head, she was still perfect. She hadn't done anything to not deserve my love. And even if she did something wrong, again, following my parents' advice, always put the other person's happiness first, whatever the price on you. And I was still willing to do that. But when I went to therapy, then it kind of became this conflict in my mind, because my therapist was either trying to convince me that I was better than I was, or that Grace was worse than she was. That was their way of healing. Like, Daniel, either you have to think more of yourself or less of her. Or my friends would say, Daniel, you dodged a bullet. Or, my family and friends, they would say, Daniel, but you deserve so much more. And in my head, I was there thinking, like, I dare you say that. Like, a week ago when she was still there, you were a fan. You were a fan of her. You were a fan of me and her together. She's still the same. I'm still the same. Why all of a sudden would you change your opinion about her? But when I would go to therapy, it seemed that the only solution was to either change her or me. Instead, why can't I stay me? She stays her. And maybe there's another why. Maybe there's a why without, like, beyond the blaming. Like, maybe, like, the truth can actually set us free. And right now, I just don't have the truth, right? What if there is something that can heal us outside of hurting each other? But I guess I've learned now that the person that hurts you is not the person that can heal you. Because when hurt comes in your life, it really comes into two components. There is, I guess, the pain part, and then there's the fear part. The fear part is when your identity is threatened in the way that one thing that you wanted to express about yourself now has the means taken away. And let's say that, for example, the identity that I wanted to express was fatherhood and being a family man. And now with Grace walking away from my life in that way, then I felt the fear that was never going to be a reality. So that identity part of me now was threatened. And of course, the hurt of how she left, that's something that you can heal as long as your identity stays whole. But I think people cannot forgive someone that hurt them as long as their identity part still feels threatened. And I think if you go back, I don't know, your life or one of your kids' life, whenever you went through something hard, it's not because of what they did, but it's because they took away the certainty of something that you wanted or something that you could express yourself through. And this is like a very cheesy example, right? I'm just gonna go with this example, but let's say there's two people. One of them earns, let's say, $1 million a year. The other one earns 30. And you give them both a gift of, I don't know, let's say $300K in the bank. And a year later, both of them get robbed into their bank account. Both of them wake up and those $300K are gone. Who do you think is going to be the one that is going to stay resentful and bitter for the rest of his life? Most likely the one that had a lower salary, because all of his dreams of expressing himself through that means now are taken away, and he has no confidence that he can replace that. He can bring it back into his life. The guy with a higher income, he knows that in a matter of time, he eventually is going to come back. His identity is not threatened. But the guy with a smaller salary instead now thinks, well, thank you for giving me that dream. I wanted to express myself giving things, or maybe having family experiences or a family trip or whatever it was. And now it's taken away and I cannot express that part of me anymore. So part of the healing that came through Grace, or I guess to heal from Grace, was that I had to restore that identity of me, that it was still possible for me to express myself as a loving man. And I guess, I had to get over the fear that when Grace left, also my identity of me as a father and as a husband was taken away. That was definitely part of it. And so that's kind of what started the whole journey. I divide the journey into 3 levels. It doesn't have to be 3 levels for everyone, but for me, it was from 1 to a deeper level and to the deepest level. Those were my 3. Maybe my first level is someone else's last, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is just my story, so I share it as I have
It's a great
experienced
story.
it. So I remember a couple of months after Grace left, I was pondering, I was trying to figure it out how to get over it. And this thought came to mind and said, Daniel, haven't you learned that there's more joy in giving than in receiving? And I thought, yeah, I mean, I learned it all throughout growing up in, seminary and Sunday school, whatever it was. I'm pretty sure it must be either scripture in Psalms or in Proverbs, maybe New Testament. Jesus said it at some point. And then my mind replied, it was still like this thought, very out of the blue, that said, well, if there is more joy in giving than in receiving, wouldn't there be more joy in giving grace rather than waiting for grace to come back? And that was the first, I guess, breakthrough. It was that now I wanted to go back to the memories of Grace to learn more about what made her lovable, her traits, her personality, the quirky things about her, anything that made her so unique, so that now I could develop those attributes and offer them to someone else.
That's really thoughtful.
Because if you're a giver, you never lose your gift. As long as you're giving, you don't lose the object of your giving. But it's when you are in the receiving mode that you're vulnerable to the whims of life or of your perception of God, that he's taking away or giving you things according to his own will, and you always feel powerless. But if you turn from receiver to giver, you never lose what's in your hands. And so that's the first time that I actually started to, I guess, that was my first healing process. Okay, now I'm in a good mode. Now I can go back to dating, because with each relationship that I'm in, I'm increasing myself. I'm increasing who Daniel is, because now Daniel can offer more. So I took
great, healthy way to move on and to approach that.
Yeah, because Grace wasn't coming back to explain, and I wanted to have nothing to do with dudes or girls. So I had to find a way for Daniel to be good. I didn't want the solution to come from the outside. So in a way, I took the fireman approach. I mean, I ran back to the memories of Grace when everybody else was telling me to walk out.
Interesting.
But there was this day that I visualized my heart as a circular room with a bunch of doors, and each door was labeled. And Grace was one of those doors that I just stayed clear away from. And I thought, how can I live a life if I'm a stranger to my own heart, if I don't know all of my corners?
How can I live a life if I'm a stranger to my own heart?
Yeah,
wow.
That's how I felt. And I said, if this is gonna cost me a self-esteem, whatever, let's do it. But I'm running back to those memories. I'm going to learn what they are trying to teach me. So that's when I went back to the memories. So I went back, I revisited all of my memories with Grace, all of the trips that we went on, all of the nights that we stayed up talking. And although I cried many times through it, at the same time, I was learning the beautiful thing that she had. And I realized that when you love something or someone, you actually make an agreement that you're going to influence each other across time and space. I mean, whether the person is there or not, you have bound each other now to become one. And I knew that because I loved Grace, I can develop now those qualities, because love makes you one. And so now I don't have to wait for Grace to come back, because I can become Grace. And of course, there's a lot of parallels between God's grace as well. That if you're waiting for God's grace to come into your life, then there might be times you feel God is not giving it to you and you're going without. But if you're focused on giving, you're never losing it. And so to me, that's when I felt, okay, now it's time to start giving grace. I'm not going to sit here waiting to receive it anymore. And so I started to give to other people the beautiful parts about her. And in giving, I found my healing. And it was the first level. Because I guess my idea at the time was that my identity was, okay, Daniel is a breakable person. Daniel can love and get hurt. But now I found a healthy way to heal. And this is maybe my math background. I don't know. But I always ask the question, is there more? Is there more to healing? Is there like a bigger perspective on this that can be maybe more healthy or more helpful? And so then the next level of healing for me came still through meditation. But I wanted to answer the question, am I a breakable person that has to get hurt, or can I choose not to get hurt in the first place? And if yes, how? And so I remember this morning that I went meditating. It was on top of the hill, on the BYU hill. There's the Y. Anyway, I brought my blanket. I took my shoes off, and I was in yoga pose. And I remember picturing myself in my mind, and I saw two versions of Daniel. One was dressed in white, the other one was dressed in gray. And intuitively, I knew that the person in white was my emotions, and the one in gray was my mind. And my mind was very troubled. It still was struggling to grasp something that still felt a little bit out of reach. And I was looking at them, going back and forth, and I thought, well, this is an interesting conversation they're having. But the emotions were trying to comfort the mind, but there seemed to be no agreement between the two. And then like the little haha moment came, and I said, well, I cannot be the object that I'm witnessing or observing, because the observer has to be detached from the observed. So if I'm seeing my emotions at play, or if I'm seeing my thoughts being played out, then I'm neither of them, because I'm observing them. I'm the outside spectator that is looking at what's happening. So if I'm not my emotions and I'm not my thoughts, then who am I? That was like the question that kind of came to mind as I was meditating. And I asked these two Daniels to show me who they were looking at when they would look at me. And that's when I still get chills when I think about it. I saw this version of Daniel that is completely light. It was this Daniel that was vulnerable yet completely confident. It was unbreakable in a way, if you could say. But it was Daniel that was simply light. And by seeing this Daniel, I realized that light is never broken. It can only be dimmed. And I realized that, okay, maybe there is a part of me, a deeper part of me, that doesn't have to get hurt each time. Because if there is not enough light, you can't blame the darkness. You can only increase the light if you want the light to be in the room. If you walk into a dark room, you're not going to get mad at the darkness because it's too strong. You just take responsibility and you say, there is not enough light here. So in each situation that came after that, I realized, Daniel, you can't blame that person. This is simply like, you don't have enough light to go through this. You don't have enough knowledge to actually heal through this. Whatever hurt in your life, they're just awakening to the part of yourself that is inadequate to see that as an opportunity. Instead, you blame and you just think of this as the biggest trial in your life. So if you take ownership and you say, right now, I simply don't know enough on how to make this a positive experience, and truth will set me free. Instead, I think we spend too much time trying to heal from other people's inflicted pain, when instead there is truth and grace available from God that will set us free in the very moment. And because I think when you take ownership of the laws of the universe that God has set forth to restore that which you lost, then you don't feel like it was never, you don't have to feel a victim anymore. If increasing your light is in your complete agency. I think what happens is that people, when they start to feel different, and then all of a sudden the world becomes, I guess, a place that is not friendly anymore to them, then they start to feel that the darkness starts to have power on its own, and that your light is limited. But that's a lie. And I realized that when I was meditating that way.
That's cool. I love this light.
Yeah. So that's when I went from my old perception that was, hey, I'm breakable, but I know how to heal, to this other perception that said, hey, you're not breakable. Like light, you can't break light.
You can't break light.
But you can be convinced, right? But you can be convinced that you shine less than you could. And so I realized I don't have to be hurt in the first place, because I don't have to believe the threats and the lies that come from the outside, because I can always rise above them by learning more. And of course, after I stepped into that reality, that brought more healing and more confidence in myself. But still, I asked, is there more? Is there a better and even deeper way to see life and to measure life and to measure myself? And that's when I started to, that's when I went through this experience of experiencing water in different shapes and forms and temperatures. So I was at a retreat with a group, and it was in Heber in Utah, and it was the month of November, so there was snow outside already. And at the place where we were staying, there was a hot tub outside, and they gave us this little exercise saying, hey, be on your own for a half hour to an hour and just do some meditation, learn something about yourself, or find some inspiration to write. It was very generic. So I went to the hot tub because usually it brings me some, more lucidity or inspiration. So I went there, and I was walking with my bare feet on the snow before I could reach the hot tub. And then when I got into the hot tub, it was 104 degrees compared to the 30 degrees outside, right? And so my feet, as soon as I got in, it was this numb feeling, tingling at first. I can't feel my feet, but then after a while, then, they get adjusted to the temperature, and now you can feel them again. And I wanted to feel water. I wanted to see if water could teach me something that day. Just a random thought. So I tried to push my hand against the surface of the water, and I was trying to push hard enough that I could feel water, but not enough that I would go under. So I was trying to just feel the surface of water. And then I started looking around, and I saw snow, and then I saw like the water in the hot tub. It was pleasing to be in, and I realized, wait a minute, like I'm immersed in water right now, but the snow is just in a form, in a shape, or in a temperature that I personally perceive as painful or not pleasant, while the water in the hot tub is something that I'm yearning for and that I would crave. But it's only water, like the essence is water. And I think that when we can go through life feeling that we are threatened and that love can be taken away, or we find love again just because all of a sudden it matches our blueprint of what love should look like in our life. But in reality, love is never lost. It's like water. Life to me is like being immersed in a hot tub where the drain is blocked. I mean, like it can be drained. You're immersed in love. Any experience you go through is an expression of love. Love is never taken away or given to you. It is always there. There is only times when you finally recognize it, and the times when you perceive it's lost. But if you look at the essence, love was always there, just like God is always there. And to me, what breaks my heart is that some people feel that they have to leave behind God after a disappointment, when God has been throughout. God is the grace that helps you go from one form of life to the next. God is what helps you go make the transition. If you are making a transition, whatever state in life you're going from to, grace is something that you don't have to give up. Grace and God's love is not something you have to give up if you're a Christian person. But to me, the problem of organized religion and religiosity in general is the underlying false cultural belief. This is not doctrinal, but it's very much cultural, that you have to earn God's love. And it is the fact that unless you meet a certain stereotype or model or blueprint or what you're supposed to be like and behave like, then you are falling away of God's love. But to me, God's love is never earned because it's free, but it is learned. So when people approach God's commandments, to me, that's not a way to earn God's love, but to learn it. Like God's love, it's something that is free.
Not a way to earn it, but to learn it.
Yeah, because to me, if you want to feel as a poor person, try to buy something that is free. The more you try to buy it, that you never feel you have enough currency to buy it. And you're there, you present yourself, can I buy it now? Can I buy it now? The answer is it's free. You can't buy it. But I think the more you're trying to buy something, the more you're enforcing the belief that you don't have enough, that your currency is not enough, whatever currency it is. If it's your spiritual currency and you're trying to buy God's love, and you will never feel like you have enough. And if you're trying to win other people's approval, then it never feels enough. If you're trying to feel finally part of the community, or now you're different, you find yourself in a very similar, in a very different state compared to your friends, and you're trying to fit in, well, the more you're trying to fit in, the more you don't. But to me, instead, God's love is not earned, meaning because it is always given for free, but you can learn it by obeying the commandments. To me, the problem is when people confuse the commandments as a way to earn it. Because if you're trying to do something to earn God's love, the underlying assumption is that you don't have it. And each action that you take after that will only reinforce the belief that maturated that action, which is, I don't have God's love in my life. The more you try, the more you go away from it. Which is why, to me, like when people beg God, almost desperately saying, God, I need you in my life. Because right now, I can't do it by myself. I can't have a wife. I can't have this. I can't have a family. I will never be good enough. The feeling they're putting out is that you don't have. And then, in a way, that becomes your prayer and that becomes your reality. But I think when we understand that through grace, God has already said yes to the prayers that we have prayed, but also the prayers that we haven't prayed yet. He has already said yes. We don't have to earn. We just have to say thank you. Then I think that we will never want or have to go without God's love, because we realize it's always been there. But God, because He's a just God, and now using a quote from C.S. Lewis, is that the king is not above the law because it is the law that makes him a king. God also has laws that keep him the loving being that He is. And then if we want to become like He is, if you want to go from subjects to royalty, then there are the laws of the kingdom to obey. So to me, now God's laws and God's commandments, they're not a way to receive his leadership or his love in my life, because that's what he paid the price for. That's what he's obeying the laws for. He's obeying the laws to give this love to me. But if I want to become part of his kingdom, or if I want to become royalty as he is, then he's going to teach me how. He's going to teach me the laws to obey. And he never expects it. He never requires it. But he invites me to. Because I think that God is the only king that wants to turn the most subjects to royalty, and the only shepherd that wants to turn the most sheep into shepherds as well. Any other type of royalty or leadership, they need followers. He's the only one that wants to turn each follower into a leader eventually. And so, through all of these, finding a better perception of God's commandments and how to earn in a way, right? I mean, it's not earn, but how to see myself deserving enough to receive God's love by realizing that He's already given. Combined then with now understanding that, hey, I am light. I cannot be broken, but I can only be dimmed. And by receiving God's grace and learning His laws, I'm only increasing that light. And then realizing that sometimes each story is not just beautiful for the ending, but it's beautiful for the story itself. Then through all of these things, then I guess I was able to find my healing. And yeah, again, it is a witness of God's grace, because I wouldn't have been able to heal by myself. It has been His grace all throughout. And ironically enough, right, this girl, Grace, I thought I had lost God's grace when Grace walked away, but actually Grace has been there all along.
Wow.
It has just changed form, it changed shape, and it has changed the requirements on me, what it takes for me to feel like I am in grace, but the essence has always been there. So what I do now to worship God is different than what I used to do 3 years ago, which is different than what I used to do 10 years ago. What I do now to love myself and to love someone and to tap into this better version of myself is different. It will always change. I think C.S. Lewis, better than anyone, is that whatever your idea of God is right now, it will be shattered from time to time. And it is God Himself that shatters that, because He's the great iconoclast. Meaning that God is the one that destroys any idol that is not Him purely. And whatever idea you have of God right now, it is probably not exactly who He is, because heavens are higher than the earth and His ways are higher than our ways. So my idea of God's love will never be as perfect as the true idea of God. And so I hope He will continue to shatter my current idea of God so that I can tap into a better and deeper and more loving idea of who He is. And then C.S. Lewis keeps going in his quote, and he said, could we not almost saying that it is in this shadowing that we find one of the marks of His presence? That He's God Himself, that He wants to show Himself to you. And He's going to destroy any assumption you falsely placed on life. Any assumption of how things should be, or things of who you should have become, or who you should be with. All those assumptions, He just wants to tear them all down so you can rebuild something more beautiful. And I think it's when things are being, torn down that we find ourselves lost, or we find ourselves being not understood by others. But in those times, I hope that everyone would still turn to God's grace, because that's not going anywhere. That's my prayer.
There's so much good of what you said, Daniel. I think some of our listeners will rewind that section. It's just so thoughtful and helpful and healing and insightful. I assume you're glad you went through this experience with grace, because it's what it's taught you about yourself and your ability to help others in your relationship with God.
Yeah. In a way,
I assume that, once you're a married man and you're sitting here talking about your wife, and you will reflect on this experience as helped you become the person that you are becoming, to be able to be in the relationship that is your marriage. And when I met with the YSA, so many times we look back on the difficult relationships that at the time were very difficult to sort of give context to, but as they were getting married, those prior relationships had better context, and the beauty and the pain of those relationships made more sense. It's kind of like Elder Uchtdorf's impressionistic painting. All those dots sometimes don't make sense, but you've made sense of them and have put them for your good and to help others. So any thoughts on that?
This can be a very geeky thought, but I studied
like honest geeky thoughts.
Yeah,
Daniel.
this is a little bit of my math and physics background that is going to come out. But when you study quantum physics, the laws that apply to those particles is very different than the laws that apply at the mechanical level or about bigger bodies, like the ones, like, I guess the scale of things that we are immersed in behaves very differently than the particles that make them. And one of the laws is that the future affects the past, meaning it is who the particle needs to be in the future that affects the past experiences. So that's what happens at the quantum level. At our physical level, at our scale of things, it's cause effect. Whatever happened first then determines where things are going to roll into. But at the quantum level, matter is as if it hasn't decided yet what it wants to be, and it is the intention of an observer that calls it to be something that then determines the process. And so to me, when I read of the creation of God, when he calls upon the waters, when they were without form and void, and he says, let there be light, and then there was light, it's because at the quantum level, matter hasn't chosen yet what it wants and needs to be. But then when it is a creator that goes there with an intention and calls it to be something out of love, and then the process starts. And so whatever your experiences have been in life, they will make sense depending on who you have decided to become. Because it is not the past that is determining where you're going, but it's where you're going that will gracefully affect retroactively your past, which is, to me, is the beauty of the atonement. Because it is the atonement that then didn't just work actively forward, but it worked backwards. That's cool. Because people were able to access God's grace even before it happened. And to me, that's a testimony that whatever I'm going through, as long as I keep my intention fixed of being like an influencer and helping people heal and helping people get to know God, at least through the portion of God's heart that I was able to find, right, through my experience. If that's my intention, then all of these experiences are working for me, not against me. And I just trust that. And I just keep my intention fixed on God's grace.
I love that you're taking some of the science and the math that you understand and linking that with the gospel of Jesus Christ and how God works. And everything you've taught so far, there's no shame. That's one of the things that you've done, is take any shame is this word where we're not enough, or we're broken, or it's our fault, or we're weak, or we need to change. And certainly we need to change and grow, but I don't think God wants us to feel shame.
Right.
And everything you're teaching and sharing doesn't feel like you're linking God's love for us and de-shaming people.
This is gonna sound maybe weird again, but I agree with every sin that people make, and I'll explain what I mean by that. It is that when people make a mistake, they simply have a godly need that they haven't learned yet how to provide for. It is as if you see a child playing on the carpet and he's playing with Legos, right? With cubes, plastic cubes. And all of a sudden he gets hungry. The first thing that the poor child does, he starts to grab one of those pieces of Legos and chew on it, right? And you will never blame or condemn or shame a child because he's doing the most obvious things with the means that he has. And so when it comes to repentance, people don't have to repent of bad behavior. They just need to repent and change the options that they have to provide for their needs. To me, is very damaging when people go to a bishop or go to an ecclesiastical authority, and the bishop takes their repentance or their confession and then either shames them or gives them a punishment without giving them the means of better options.
It's interesting.
Because you can only repent when you have better options on how to provide for your godly needs. One of your godly needs is belonging. One of your godly needs is to be loved. One of your godly needs is to be part of a community and feel like you're contributing. And if those things are taken out, then of course you're going to do the first thing that's going to give you some meaning. If you want some attention, then you're probably going to make a post, or maybe you feel like now you're entitled to be depressed, or now you're entitled to maybe to be different because now you're craving for this attention you're not getting in any other way. And so I agree with every sin that you have made, because that was the best way that you had convinced yourself to provide for that need that God had given you. And so to me, when people say, I'm such a bad person, I need to repent for this, I'm like, you're not a bad person. You're just ignorant or not aware of better options to provide for that need. Unless someone gives you a better option, you're going to go back to that sin or to that mistake. Because providing for that need is more important than the shame that comes from it. And people understand that, I think.
I really like that. I look at my experience with the YSAs, and I've shared the iceberg concept a lot. Sorry, listeners. It's this idea that I think is consistent with what you're saying, is sometimes as a YSA bishop, I'd we'd both see bad behavior like the part of the iceberg above the water. But to be really
Right.
helpful, the more I served, the more I put that on that's off to the side and tried to figure out what was going on down at the bottom of the iceberg. And down at the bottom of the iceberg are probably the need for connection, the need or dealing with stress or anxiety, and just a lot of the bad behavior. And neither of us are excusing the bad behavior.
Right.
We're both saying we need to repent, but I think it's a more thoughtful way to sort of address what's going on in a non-shaming. Because if I felt I could take shame out of people's lives, which seems what Christ did,
Right.
then people were in a much healthier place to sort of move forward in a positive way and to continue to make progress in their life versus this shame whirlpool cycle that's so difficult.
Right. And this is, again, just me wanting to give merit to whom the merit belongs to, is that in times when I didn't know of a better way, I guess in a way I feel like crying and praying like the prayer of Christ in Gethsemane, when he said, is there no other way? Meaning, God, right now, given my needs and my options, this is the only way that I can provide for them. And I was honest. Most of the time were things I shouldn't have done. Or I was telling God I was going to do things that maybe I knew he wouldn't be proud of. But in my heart, I was praying and saying, God, is there no other way for me to provide for this need right now? And oddly enough, the answer was always grace. Like, Daniel, if you don't know any better, then ask for grace, because grace is never going to leave you. And so I don't know where your listeners are when it comes to religiosity or spirituality or anything in between, but to me, if you come at a time in your life when you really can't deal anymore with the current options you have, you need a better option, I would pray for grace. Because many times when I was tempted to do things that I shouldn't have done, I prayed for grace, and all of a sudden I found myself embraced in this love and in this acceptance of who I was. And whatever was the old option stopped being an option, because now I had a better one. Because now I finally believe that there is unconditional love that is not only understood, but is experienced. Like I never have to go a day in my life without feeling immersed in God's love if I just ask for it. Now I can,
and feel worthy to ask for that, because
right.
we all are.
And we always are worthy to ask for that.
Yeah.
Now the question is, are you at the point that you can give it as God gives? Well, that depends on how much you're learning about God, if you're obeying the laws that he is obeying to be the God of love that he is, right? That's a different question. But when it comes to feeling love for yourself, you never have to go a day without, because that's what Christ died for. Christ died so you will never have to go a day without. And if you do, it's only because you're not receiving and you're not opening your hands to receive a gift that is already given to you. And Doctrine and Covenants, I love one verse, and it says, what does benefit of man if a gift is bestowed upon him and he receiveth not the gift? Behold, he rejoices not in that which is given unto him, nor in him who is the giver of the gift. And to me, Christ has died to give me this beautiful gift of grace available at any time. And if I don't receive it, then I'm not rejoicing in grace. I'm not rejoicing in him who is the giver of the gift. And to me, that's the problem. I think we need to meet the God beyond our needs. Because so long as you have a need, and it's not being met currently by God or by other people, you will start being resentful. Instead, I started to really appreciate my parents when I started to become more independent of them, right? It's when you move out of the house that you realize how beautiful your house was. And to me, there is your current idea of who God is that is based on your needs or who he needs to be a worthy God for you to worship. And then there is a true idea of God. And I hope that eventually we meet this God beyond our needs. Maybe God doesn't have to be the one that helps me find the perfect job and the perfect calling in life. It gives me popularity or it gives me the right girl, because he's the God that has loved me all throughout. So I hope he keeps being the one that closes doors. So I'm forced to turn to him and say, okay, who are you? If you're not the one that opens this door and this door and this door, but somehow I believe you're still here, then who are you? And anyway, this is just my thoughts. I guess I feel very close to God, even if now I worship in a different way that I did before. If now maybe do different practices and rituals in my daily worship that maybe some people agree with, some people don't, but it is my way of worship. I don't have to apologize to anyone, because that's how I'm going to find out a part of God's heart that was only mine to find. And then it's my pleasure not to share with other people. So
that's great.
I don't expect this to impact everyone, because they're discovering different parts of, they're on different journeys to find their piece of God's heart, right? And I hope that they will share with me. So I hope that in any church congregation, church community, that you, if you're different, that you will find the courage to go there, because people there, they don't know God exactly and completely, but they can find God through you, because there is questions about God's love that you only had the courage to ask, because maybe they never had, and they ask different questions, right? And it's when we come together before, as I call the fireplace of heaven, when we get to share our stories, right? And I hope that you can share your story without shame, actually with pride, because sometimes it's not as much about having the happy ending of your story, but it's about having a story to tell and to share, right? I mean, think about the Titanic. It's a horrible love story, right? I mean, the poor guy dies, but we all love this story, not because of the quality of the ending, but it's because of the depth of the feeling.
Yeah.
And so one thing that I've learned is that feelings are beautiful when they're deep, not when they're good. And so I hope that people can own their story. For as hard as it can be, it's a story to tell, and you're learning something about God that others aren't. So please own your story and then share it, because we need it.
That's very helpful for LGBTQ people and many people that are walking harder roads. That's very, very helpful. Talk about, so much of what you're sharing with us is helpful for those that are suicidal or dealing with suicide. Just what would you say, what you say in your book to your friends that are suicidal to give them hope?
Yeah, so when I guess I talk about the idea of love and loving life, and love really comes in two components. There is like the pain part and the joy part. When we love something that is behaving as we hoped or as we expected, then that's joy, right? We're excited about it. And when the object of our love starts to behave differently, then we start to experience pain. But what really pain is your resistance to become one with something that is behaving differently than what you wanted. And so I think sometimes life, in a way, starts to behave differently than what we wanted. But if we love life, then we're willing to go through the joys and the pains. And it is same as witnessing the birth of a child. You have no idea what the child is going to be like. You know, it can be a lawyer, it can be a doctor, it can be a bum in 20 years, right? Who knows? But you have made already this commitment. You're going to be there for the whole process, whatever the process requires. And I think in a way you have to commit to loving your life, whatever your life is going to be, just as you would a child. So to me, that's why I've made the exercise of not dating my dreams, but marrying them. Because when you marry something, you marry a purpose, and you don't have to make that decision again down the road if the object of your marriage changes. But if you are tied to a specific form or specific instance of your object of love, then as soon as the object changes, you have to choose again. Like, am I willing now to love this different object? And I think that's very much applies to people that are married, and all of a sudden the spouse changes because of something that happened. And they find themselves almost struggling to love this new person. But I think love is learning how to love the stranger you find yourself married to. Not because the stranger is lovable, but because you want to change through the process of love. I think love is more of the process of discovering myself by loving something that is continually going to change. And so when my friend, he was being suicidal because his life didn't match his blueprint, then I'm like, don't put expectations on life, because life wants to be as free as you want to be. Life right now is expressing herself in this fashion, and I hope you will accept it and love it as it is right now. And if there are things in your life that need to change, right, then I just invite everyone to never feel and never stay stuck. Make the wrong decision in the wrong direction if you need to, because God can move a car that is moving, but he cannot move a parked car. So if you feel that like now in order to change, to bring some freedom and joy in your life, you have to do something that is completely different out of your old paradigms and standards, then trust that God is going to be there with you. And that if it's a wrong choice you're going towards, he's going to change, to change the direction and help you in the process. But never feel they have to stay stuck. Because I think it's when you're stuck and you feel that you're powerless, that's when you want to check out of life. What's the point of living if the best version of myself will never be expressed? But if there is this better version of yourself that you are going towards, then trust that God is going to be there through grace, even with each wrong step you make towards it, but just never stop going towards that version of yourself. That will be my 2 cents.
It's very, very helpful. How many people, we kind of talked at this beginning, do you get people reaching out to you, say, I'm suicidal, what should I do?
I would say right now the frequency is probably once a week.
Uh-huh.
I get someone that either tells me he or she is suicidal or they're dealing with someone that is. And or sometimes people that haven't read the book, sometimes read that have read the book. So I'm starting to have a little bit of that. I wouldn't say something as
Do you
extreme.
give the same answer to everybody? How do you handle those people that reach out to you and say, "Hey, Daniel, I'm suicidal," or do you get people that reach out to you and say, "I've read your book and now I'm much better"?
That's a good question. If people allow me to dig deep into them, then it's easier to help. I find it hard when people acknowledge a problem but they don't let you go in. So I have a friend right now. She's suicidal. She's debating whether she should take her life or not. There's times when she lets me go in. Sometimes she doesn't. So I find that hard. But again, I guess it goes back to the idea of grace. I think there's love and people that want to help you, but sometimes we don't open our hands towards something that is already there.
I think that's really important for those that are suicidal. The way you frame that up is, I think there are people that want to help, but if you're suicidal, you've got to be vulnerable enough to let people and find someone you can trust, whether it's a therapist or a friend, church leader, if they've got that kind of skill to go that deep,
right,
to be able to completely open up and completely talk about who they are and what at the core. Because I think listening and talking is so healing within itself, just to be able to talk to somebody about why you're suicidal, and then your ability or other ability to help that. But I think you're right. There's no simple answer often. There's no one-liner, especially if someone's not willing to sort of open up.
Right. And when people don't want to talk about it, sometimes they just want me to be there. Sometimes they just want your silence. They don't want your answers. Because in a way,
and that takes a lot of maturity to do and can be very helpful.
Right. Because I went through grace alone. No one was there. Right. So I don't expect anyone to exactly know what it was like. Just the same way that I don't know exactly what it is like for someone else to go through their trial. I don't know what it feels like to having to change your religion in a household of very strong, other religion. Or I don't know what it is like to change your sexual orientation when all of your friends instead, they are the other way. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what that feels like. I don't want you at the same time to tell me that what mine cross felt like, because no one does. I don't know. You don't know what my cross feels like. I don't know what your cross feels like, but I can be there to hear your story. And I think that feel like hearing someone else's story is sometimes all that they want. Because I think sometimes we forget to categorize each action into really two buckets. Either people are giving love or they are begging for love. That's the basis of all communications. Either we are giving out of love that we feel, or we are begging out of love that we crave. And I realize that sometimes if people are a little feisty and whatever when I'm trying to give them love, right, they're not receiving it and they're resisting me and my words, I realize, okay, this person is clearly not giving me love back. So this person is begging for love. How can I give this person in a way that this person will receive it? And sometimes it's just sit there in silence with them. You don't have to say anything. But sometimes just put yourself out of the equation, the solution becomes clear. And sometimes most of the time people, I would say, they are begging for love. When they're screaming, when they're pointing fingers at you, when they're blaming you for what you did or didn't do, what they're saying is, look, Daniel, I don't feel loved right now. Can you help me out? So I try to filter out all of the noise or everything else that people are telling me. What they're saying is, hey, I need to feel loved. And then I ask myself, okay, and I pray and say, okay, God, through your grace, can you show me how this person is going to receive your love through me right now? Sometimes it's silent. Sometimes I take the person out and we go something to just take our mind off of things. Sometimes is go on a walk. Sometimes I give compliment. Sometimes we pray together. Whatever it is, I just try not to impose my idea of what love should look like on their needs, right? Because it's their Lego block. Their Lego block. Right? Like I had my Lego block. And right now I need to give them the food that they need, not the one that has fed me before, because we were all fed in different ways.
How do you feel about Grace now, this woman that broke up with you?
That's a great question. I still haven't talked to her. So it's funny that you ask. Sometimes I do look back at the pictures and And sometimes I
Do you
cry.
feel pain when you see those pictures?
No. I feel gratitude for having that story.
You feel gratitude.
Because if anything, I can go back to heaven and say, hey, you know what? I know what love feels like. I know what it feels like to wake up and you feel like God has sent an angel just for you that morning. And I know what it feels like to write a note and feeling like words are coming out of me that I had no idea I had the capacity to write, just because I have a muse that is inspiring me. So if anything, I feel that God has still given me more than I could have deserved. Because life is not a gift we could have given ourselves. It's always something that's been given to us.
So when you think of grace, it doesn't regenerate the pain you felt.
No, I'm grateful. I'm excited.
Did you forgive Grace? Do you feel like you needed to forgive her?
Yeah, looking back, I realized what she was going through, because she was coming out of, a life of inactivity in the church, and all of a sudden she did a 180 change, and then she jumped back into the church. She met me right after. She got her patriarchal blessing while we were together. She got her endowment while we were together. So she had been making all these big changes and steps so fast that I think it just came to the point she felt a little confused, as if her previous identity started to knock at the door again, and she wanted to find the right balance.
Mm-hmm.
So I realized that, maybe she just needed some time. Maybe she needed things to go slower, and maybe she didn't handle it the right way. But to me, she exercised the same agency that made her beautiful in the first place. To me, I loved Grace for all of the life decisions that she has made, because with each decision, she was expressing herself. So when she decided to walk away without saying anything, in a way, I'm still grateful, and maybe I like her more because that's who Grace is, right? That I love her and I loved her, I should say, for the choices that she was making and how she was making them. I love that she was fearless. I love that she would make the hard decision and leave everything behind to embrace a new life, which is what she did before meeting me. She left a life of sin and compromises with God, and she left it right away to jump back into a relationship with God. And so when she changed me when she left me abruptly and she changed so fast, I just know that she was using the same determination and strength that I loved so much about her. So in a way, I don't feel any resentment towards her. It is like loving a horse but blaming the horse for its strength. I mean, that's what made the horse that way. And that's what you admire in the horse. And if sometimes it hurts you because it kicks you out of, because it starts to kick and whatnot, and you fall and you get hurt, at the same time, you hope it would be this way because it's what makes the horse so beautiful in your eyes, even if sometimes it hurts you. So, no regrets.
I love that answer. And when we met our listeners, Daniel and I met before we did this podcast, and I just got to learn more about Daniel. I kind of opened up with some people that have hurt me in my life, not in my immediate family, but in my circle. And you asked me that very same question: have you forgiven that person?
Right.
And I've thought about that question, it was probably 3 weeks ago or a month that we met. And it was such a helpful question for me, as I am trying to follow your example. And our listeners, all of our listeners right now can probably think of people that have hurt them and how we are processing that. And if we're able to forgive and move on and do what you're doing and look at the beauty and what we can learn from those situations, and the empathy you even just expressed to this prior girlfriend, and the understanding of where she was coming from and why it ended like that. I just thought that is the gospel of Jesus Christ, Daniel. That is the atonement. And it's a real life practical example of what you've figured out, already in your life. And maybe, you're just in a wonderful, unique spot. But how that conversation was very helpful for me. So I hope our listeners are thinking, because I think God wants us to have pain leave our lives. And he wants the atonement to be able to help us do that. But one of the most challenging things as a YSA bishop, I could help YSAs repent and use the atonement to take sin out of their life. That was pretty, it was sort of a set process. But to take pain out of our lives, it's not our fault. And there's a bunch of categories that come into our lives. It's sort of all this pain that's not our fault. Car crashes, close people dying, right. Girlfriend situation. There's just multiple categories. Or even sometimes the limitations of our own restored church. I'm sure as a leader, I brought pain into people's lives, not intentionally, but something I said or didn't say, or a hallway, an interaction that was rushed or something. And so I think you're helping us understand how to take pain out of our lives through this combination of the gospel of Jesus Christ and some really practical things that you're talking about.
Right.
Any more thoughts on that as we wrap up?
Yeah. I would say define what forgiveness means for you, because it's hard to practice something that you haven't defined in your life.
To me, it's if I've been hurt by somebody, it's my ability to see that person or look at that person's face or think of that person. That's why I asked you about your prior girlfriend and not have any more pain or anger or wanting to be negative or hurt that person or see that person not succeed in their life. So to me, forgiveness is sort of being able to not be triggered with pain and want the best for that person.
There was, I guess everyone can resonate with that, right? That's, to me, I guess when I defined forgiveness for myself, I said forgiveness for me is when I have restored the identity that the hurt took away.
That's looking more at you and what you need. Yeah, and that's part of forget. I like that. Yeah, so it's probably a twofold process.
Right.
The person that you feel has hurt you, plus your own self that's wounded because of that.
Yeah, so when I clearly defined what forgiveness meant for me and I put it into something that is in my control, that's when I start to feel that I don't have to be a victim to anyone. Because forgiveness is for me to restore, through God's grace and laws, an identity that I had before that I perceived was taken away. And so as whatever happens through life, whether I lose a job or whether I lose a girlfriend or whatever type of rejection I receive, I always go back to, okay, what's my identity and what are my means right now, my opportunities right now? And then I feel that threat to my identity component, once that's taken away, there might be a hurt component still towards a person because of how they did what they did. But I feel that it's a lot easier to give up something when they are not a threat to you anymore. And of course, if you don't feel like you can do it on your own, personally, I still go back to God's grace. I still pray and I say, okay, God, I feel that honest prayers, the ones where you tell God what you can't or can't do, are always they're always the most powerful to me. Especially when I tell God, right now, I don't feel your presence. Right now, I have no clue what I'm doing. Or right now, I haven't received a clear answer from you for a while now, and I'm a little frustrated. And I would love if you could come into my life now, because I love you. I'm committed to you, and I'm committed to serve other people. But anyway, it's when I dare to make the things that otherwise I shouldn't say, I guess, that I find God, he's still there with me. I think that some people, they give up on prayer when it's not standard anymore. When it's not, unless I'm praying out of gratitude, I shouldn't pray. No, you should pray for gratitude and ingratitude. Just pray whatever it's in your heart and ask God to change the prayer by the end.
That's great. In conclusion, tell our listeners you want to keep writing. Do you want to give us any hints on your next book you'd like to write?
I would love to. So I guess we kind of mentioned this, before we started, but it was, I want to write next. I want to be a collection of stories on how people open their heart to grace, both in career settings or if it was a relationship setting, meaning what did you do? What did you experience that you felt was a little bit outside of your capacity to earn? Because I think that the best days in your life were days when you lived something or received something or experienced something that just felt it was almost too good to be true. It was a little bit too good for Daniel to experience. It was a little bit more than Daniel deserved. And those were the days when God was showing him to me. He was telling me, Daniel, this is how good I can be if you just trust me. And so I want to make a collection of stories of how people, through this type of grace, they were able to make advancements in careers, or how they were able to get out of bad relationships into the right one. But I guess the common theme that I want to find is, what did people do to find themselves in a position that they can receive that grace? Because to me, there's still too many people that don't open the heart to something that is already given them. And to me, that breaks my heart in a way, because they're placing on themselves limitations they really don't need to have. There is all of this love and this power that is available, and we don't dare to tap into it. So that's I guess the mystery that I want to, to resolve, is how do I find myself receiving and being open towards something that is too good for me to receive at the same time. So that might be next.
Well, Daniel, I just recognize you don't want to be complimented because that's not your nature, but you have a unique life mission. You're 28 years old and have this spiritual and mental and emotional maturity that's so helpful and so wonderful. So you've got this mathematics academic background, a financial career, but you've got this writing thing going on. And I love how all these things that seem to be so different actually come together to form you and your wonderful life mission. So keep following your dreams, keep writing. Your voice is a voice of healing and of hope. And I believe God has brought, wonderful millennials. Your generation, I call them, it's this millennial generation. And all generations are good, but there's something unique about your generation and your ability to heal and bring hope and bring the gospel to more people. So keep being you and keep following your dreams and keep sharing and talking. And thank you, Daniel, for joining us on an episode of Listen, Learn, and Love.
Thank you.